Michelob Ultra and Myrtle Beach wholesaler Southern Crown Partners Incorporated know our consumers enjoy relaxing days on the water with Mick Ultra's crisp and refreshing taste in hand. It's important to remember to drink and boat responsibly. Choose to be or to designate a sober skipper before leaving the dock. Do it for your family and friends, your passengers, and everyone else on board. Michelob Ultra salutes all sober skippers who take the pledge. Cheers, and we'll see you on the water.
In Myrtle Beach, you always go at your own pace. Lie out on the sand, lie out by the pool, go boogie boarding, go surfing, walk the boardwalk, walk the marsh walk, golf at one of 90 golf courses, mini golf at one of 50 mini golf courses, fish off a pier, fish from a chartered boat, go shopping, get drinks, eat the freshest seafood. The list is exhaustive, but the experience isn't. You can go all out or do nothing at all. How you relax is up to you. There is so much to do and explore, whether you're traveling with friends, family, or just yourself. With 60 miles of beach, you're going to find your place. If this sounds like what you need, then this is where you belong.
Trilogy Outdoors.
All right. Welcome to Trilogy Outdoors Podcast. We're coming to you, and hey, we're in a steamy studio today. The senator is joining me finally. You know, this man's been busy. I meant to ask you, have you been involved with some of the mitigation? Have you had to go around during this? I know you reached out to a lot of your constituents and everything during the flood.
Yeah.
Have you had to go around and deal with it?
Yeah, for sure. We're talking with the Office of Resilience, which is an agency that I helped create. I created it. It was
Absolutely.
my bill. And yeah, we're neck deep in it. Unfortunately, no pun intended. There's probably going to need to be another 24 buyouts if I had to guess.
Yeah, you and I was with you when you were gifted a nice plaque from Coastal Carolina. I think that was where that all came about, right?
Honorary doctorate.
Honorary doctorate. Do you hear that, Jay?
Doctor of Coastal Sciences or something like that. I think that's what they called it.
Yeah. Well, we got another honorary guest today. We got a great guest today. Stephen, I'm going to let you introduce Jay. Yeah. I'll let you introduce him, and let's see if you can remember his title.
No, I can't. Jay Cantrell is with us. You heard him laugh a minute ago. Jay is a biologist with DNR in the big game program. I got that much right.
Yep,
that's correct.
What's the rest of it, Jay?
That's kind of enough. But I'm an assistant big game program coordinator if we want to get technical. But that doesn't say much since there's only two of us that are in the program. So
gotcha.
But,
so for the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources.
Correct.
Okay.
You got your hands full.
Yeah. Jay, we brought you on today primarily. We're going to talk to you about whatever we really venture into here. But we brought you on today to talk to you primarily about the new tagging system. Well, it's not a tagging system. It's a reporting system.
Correct.
The new reporting system South Carolina has undergone. I have received a tremendous amount of phone calls and emails and text messages.
Yeah, we have too, just so you know.
And I know you have too,
yep.
English, and I'm sure our website has too, about this reporting system. And as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jay, I just want to define what the reporting system is today. The requirement is today that you have to report your deer to DNR, preferably through the app system, before you're able to get it processed. Is that right?
Correct. That's correct. Yeah, the way it reads is, the person that harvests a big game species has to report through the electronic harvest reporting system. We prefer the app just because it's easier, but there are other methods, and we can talk about that. But they have to report either by midnight of the day of harvest, or if they're going to be transferring that carcass to someone else, typically a deer processor, they have to report it before them because they have to provide that confirmation number at the time that they transfer that carcass. And that's pretty typical with other states that have this system. that once that deer leaves your possession, it needs to have been reported, and you provide that number to who you're giving the deer to. So,
All right. Other than, and I told you I'm going to ask you some tough questions, so
yeah.
get ready, buckle up. Other than the obvious excuse, that's not the right word. Other than the obvious reason of other states do it, why? What's the purpose?
It's primarily for compliance, to encourage compliance, because and to preface this, we're one of the last states to implement a system like this. So we've learned a lot from talking to our counterparts in other states that have done it. And what has been learned about harvest reporting is that, once a deer gets to a processor, the likelihood of someone reporting it drops significantly. So, once they've kind of cleared those hurdles and it's, they've tagged it, they've taken it somewhere and dropped it off, the likelihood of them complying with the law and reporting it drops, if they didn't have to do it before then. So that's really the gist of it, is just to get good compliance so we can get good data. Because once it's out of somebody's possession, I guess it's kind of an out of sight, out of mind, or they feel like, it's, they've cleared the hurdles of enforcement, and at that point, they are less likely to report. So that's it in a nutshell.
Well, some of the complaints focus on, and I'm going to get to a few of the complaints, but some of the complaints that I have heard recently focus on the reporting before the processing part that you just mentioned. And some of those complaints have to do with cell phone service. Our farm is located in a very rural part of the county, and we don't have cell phone service. And where our processor is, we don't have cell phone service. So are we supposed to drive an hour away to get cell phone service, get on the app, figure out how to report it, drive back before we can do our deer, before we can process our deer? And you're right. You find you don't have to report until midnight of the day of the kill, but you find a deer. Let's say you shoot a deer at dark, 8 o'clock nowadays. You find him at 9 o'clock. You pack him up. You drive him out of the woods or out of the swamp. You get back to your cabin at 10 o'clock. You rush over to the processor that closes at 11 o'clock, and oops, I haven't reported it. Now what do? You got a bunch of people that could be out of compliance.
Yeah. Well, there are two things I'd say to that. One, within that legislation, if you look at it, there's I got it printed out in front of me so I don't misspeak, but it says a harvest report must be submitted by midnight of the day of harvest unless a person is incapable of accessing the reporting system. It says in which case a report must be submitted prior to the carcass leaving the person's possession. So still, in your case, they would be in trouble. But I've heard that same complaint, and I push back a little because I think that's just a complaint that people don't want to do it and don't like it. I get all over this state. I know you do too. And there's not a lot of places where you're out of cell phone service for extended periods. There's obviously holes and gaps, but to say that somebody would have to drive an hour to get the cell phone service just isn't the case anymore. There's just not that many holes in the service coverage to be able to get to a place where they can report.
Okay. And I'm not going to argue the point. I'm just going to tell you what the complaints are, and you can you can address them as you see fit, unless I find your argument to be ridiculous, and then I'm going to beat up on you. Okay.
I'm sorry, Jay. Hey, Jay, I'm the nice one here. You know that, so I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And there are other methods, to report too. That's not just the app.
I was going to ask that. Can you get on the computer and do it? Like for some people that, go ahead.
You can get on the computer. There's web access, and so you got that. And I know sometimes that's problematic as well. But I think we all know that there's been a lot of steps taken since the pandemic to get high-speed internet in a lot of rural areas, and so there's There's, you could get on Wi-Fi somewhere. You could, there's ways to report like that. There's also a phone number that you can call, and it's a touch tone system to report by phone. There's also a text option, so I mean, if you can get a text out, if you can make a phone call, if you can get up, Wi-Fi, and again, I travel all over the state, and I just don't find that many places where there's that big of holes to where you can't do one of those things. So,
Maybe so.
and again, we're not having to report at the point of harvest. You have until either you get to a processor, or if you're taking it home till midnight.
In most cases, I'm not going to argue that point, but I would say in most cases that's probably a very short window. I would guess that's a 3 or 4 hour window in most cases. But
Yeah.
I mean, you're right. Some deer do get killed in the morning for sure.
Yeah.
I would bet that most deer in South Carolina get killed in the afternoon, probably right at dark, which tells me you've got somewhere between a 3 and a 4 hour window to get that reporting done. And if you show up at your processor and there's no internet service or cell phone service at your processor, you're going to have some angry people, for sure. Now,
and what we've told people that have approached us with that is saying, look, this is year one. We expect some hiccups and some growing pains and to learn, and we're going to be patient and gracious and understanding, and we would kind of expect the same for us, and let's work through this and see how big a problem this is, and our law enforcement folks are not out to write a lot of tickets on this year. It's an educational year. It's an effort to get people up to speed, and if this becomes a large problem and not just a one-off here and there, then we can address it and look at it going forward, but what we have learned, again, from talking to other states and looking at other states is, as I mentioned, if you don't require it before they go to processor, compliance drops in, and then the longer you allow, if you don't, ours is midnight of day of harvest. If you go to 48 hours or 72 hours, the more opportunity you give people, the lower the compliance gets, and so the lower the quality of your data, that you're getting.
well, you're probably not going to get any compliance from people that process their own deer, I wouldn't think.
Well, I would think you'd get some, but we don't have numbers on that. That's something that I'm interested in surveying going forward. But I think at this day and age, there's very few people that are processing their own deer. I'm one of them, but I'd say it's in the single-digit percentages of hunters. But I think you'll still get some. I mean, there's people that want to do the right thing.
Yeah, you'll get some.
Right.
You'll get some for sure, but unless you force compliance at the point of a processor, I don't think it. Like you said, I mean, your own argument lends me to believe that you're not going to do it unless you're forced to do it, and you're certainly not forced to do it if you're taking the deer home. All right, so right now, does a processor have to do anything? I mean, prior to this rule, did a processor have to report deer to DNR? I don't know the answer.
No.
Okay.
No, they did not have to report anything to us, and even now they're not reporting to us, and I think that's a kind of a misnomer for a lot of the public, is they think that we're getting data from processors. So what a processor has had to do in the past, and it still doesn't change, is there's laws that say they have to, and I don't have the exact wording in front of me, but they basically have to record information on the hunter that's dropping off a deer. They have to record their name and license number or customer ID or whatnot, and the date. And so, and what a lot of them have done once, in 2015, 2016, when we started with tagging of all deer, what most of those processors did then was just attach the tag to the paperwork, or to the, most of the, every processor set up a little different, but they all have some kind of log that they're entering in deer that are coming in with customer information, and they all put some kind of tag, paper tag of some sort on the deer to know what to do with it. And most of them are just now stapling the hunter's deer tag. That way the hunter's name and customer ID is right there. And so they had to maintain some kind of records previously by law on who was leaving deer with them and how many deer. All they have to do now, the only thing that was added in this statute, is that the processor has to record that confirmation number that the hunter provides them that comes from the report, the harvest report, and they have to maintain that number until the meat is picked up by the hunter. So basically, like I said, all these processors have some bookkeeping. They have to, keep up with who's bringing deer in so they can contact them to come get them and know what to charge them. On their paperwork, they just have to write that confirmation number down, with whatever, with the hunter's name and phone number, whatever else they're getting. So, and that's the end of, we're not following up at the end of the season and collecting data from processors to get some estimate of deer harvest.
Why not?
And
why not?
Well, one, it would be, well, again, all deer aren't going to processors. And two, it'd be kind of adding a burden on them to keep detailed records. And then we would have to, go around to all these people. That's why we've always relied on, and we can get into kind of the brief history, but how we've gotten harvest estimates is from postseason surveys in recent history. It used to be check stations, but, I've talked to some hunters since then and said, one of the questions, and I'm sure you've heard it too, is we have to tag deer. Why do we have to report them? And, there's some hunters that have a misconception that when you take a deer to a processor, they take the tag off and they save it in a box or something. And we come around at the end of the season and collect them all and count them up and see how many deer were killed. And that would be problematic and lack accuracy. One, you'd have to worry about the processor keeping up with those. They're going to be ripped, torn, bloody. They get thrown away accidentally or something. And then we would have to go through and physically count, 200,000 tags. The other is we don't even know who all the processors are. We don't regulate them. They're not, they're not regulated in statute or regulation or anything. So, we have a pretty good idea just from our own digging around that, we've got a list of processors and mailing addresses, but we don't know who all they are. So that's, like I said, it wouldn't be a very efficient or accurate way to get harvest data. We do work with some processors periodically, individually. We've contracted with some to collect some data for us on a smaller scale, some biological data. We've paid them to, get us weights and pull jawbones that we've aged or get antler measurements. And so we can have a subset of data to kind of look at, but we don't, work with all processors and to get harvest data.
So why, all right, if there's a connection between the processing and the reporting, right? I mean, the rule currently says you have to report your deer before it can be processed, right?
Mm-hmm.
How's that enforced?
Well,
I mean, if you don't keep a list of processors, you don't regulate processors, you don't check after processors, you don't ask processors for tags or hunter data, how is it or why is it that any processor would care whether or not the deer was reported before they took it?
We still have the ability to come around, and our enforcement officers could come to a processor and look at their books anytime and see if they recorded confirmation numbers in their paperwork.
And what if they didn't? What if they didn't?
Well, then they're violating that statute.
And
that could be charged.
And what's the charge?
Well, it's a menial fine. I mean, I think it's a $25 fine. It's not a huge charge.
So a processor under the rule could be charged with something.
They could.
Okay. What's the charge? Any idea?
I think it's $25.
No, I mean, what's the charge, not the fine?
What's the?
Well, it's
Now, you're talking about you're talking about a charge that the hunter could have for not.
Well, both, because I'm looking at the statute, and the process, and in the statute, it says the processor must record and maintain the harvest report confirmation number until the process meat is received by the hunter and designee. And then you get on down, a person who violates this section or provisions established by the department, blah, 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 is guilty of a misdemeanor, and upon conviction must be fined not more than $25. So they fall into that same statute.
Okay.
To where, if there's a responsibility on the hunter to report, and there's a responsibility on the processor to record. It's the hunter's responsibility to provide that number to the processor, and it's their responsibility to record it and maintain it.
But nobody's really checking after anybody, right? Unless you get a report of somebody, nobody's really checking after these guys.
No, but yeah, if we got a report that, hey, this processor doesn't care, they're not checking to see if anybody's, got a confirmation number. But they've been they've kind of been de facto an arm of enforcement with tagging, because they're not, have historically not taken deer that are untagged. So this is just, kind of the next level in that, is just to say, hey, we want people to report. The best way to do it is to require it prior to it going to a processor. And some other states have kind of done it in language where it's that transfer of ownership per se. If you're giving that deer to somebody else, you need to, provide some record of who it came from, and that would be the confirmation number. So if there was any question, who harvested the deer, it's right there. So
the next most obvious question is, I got the why. I understand the why. And to restate your why, it's so that you can. Bottom line is so you can have better data, right?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, so why has there been some concern that deer populations in South Carolina are dwindling?
No, it's
deer
not.
Populations are doing great, right?
They are. So it's not from a concern that right now they're doing great right now. So
yeah,
I'll give you just kind of the why on. You're right. The why on the timing of when it has to happen. We've covered the why do we need the data is kind of the next question. And so a few things, and this will take a minute, but to begin with, one of the key components in managing any game species, but particularly a big game species, is to be able to accurately assess annual harvest. You need to know how many animals are being removed to keep up with what harvest is over time, and to look at that. And although, right now populations are good, that's not always the case. Populations go up and down.
Can I pause you right there, Jay? So
yes.
So I don't know if what you said. I'm not a biologist. Okay. So forgive me if my statement is incorrect, but I don't know if what you said was complete. I'm not saying it's not true. I'm saying I don't know if it's complete. You said one way that we do this is to, and I'm paraphrasing, is to get harvest data. But isn't that a recipe, just managing a herd via harvest data? Isn't that a recipe for mismanagement? Shouldn't we know what we have and know what we're taking in order to have a complete picture of what we should be doing?
Yeah, we do. But one way to estimate what you have, on the ground is to look at what you're removing every year. There's population models that you can, plug in various variables and factors and plug in harvest and get estimates of, basically your standing crop, your population is.
So Inglis, if this is the case, and biologists do in fact have these models that can pull what is being harvested on a regular basis and can extrapolate that out with the model to tell you what you should have in terms of population. If that's the case, and Jay, a biologist at DNR, telling us that's the case, if that's the case, then NOAA should be able to plug in how many red snapper are discarded every single year, how many red snapper are caught every single year.
And do the same.
Why can't they do that, Inglis?
I don't know.
I don't know either. I'm sorry,
That's a
Jay.
great, Jay. Sorry to get off subject.
We're a
but,
little off subject
No.
there, Jay.
but that is true.
But you're telling me,
Yeah.
Jay, you're telling
You're
me
telling us.
that if 200,000 tags are turned in and 200,000 deer are reported this year, you can bet that there's another, I don't know, let's just say 10% that weren't reported. You can guess that's 220,000 deer. Am I about right? Is that an average? What is that? Let me just ask you this. What's the average? What's the average on a yearly?
Last year, our harvest estimate was 198,000 deer.
All right, so around
harvested.
200,000. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so this year we find out that there's 200-something thousand
Wait a minute.
deer.
That's a harvest or that's the population?
Harvest.
That's the harvest.
Holy mackerel. Okay.
Yeah, we got a lot of deer in South
Yeah, we do.
So we find out this year there's been 200,000 reports. We estimate 10% non-reporting, so 220,000 deer have been killed this year, approximately by rifle or bow. And then I don't know how many are killed by car, probably maybe even maybe double that. I don't know. It's probably a lot, I would guess, that are killed by car. So do y'all take into consideration roadkills, Jay?
Yeah, we do.
What's the average
it's not-
roadkill? Do you know?
I'd have to look, but we get some numbers from DOT and some numbers from insurance companies, and right off the top of my head, I can't remember. It's thousands.
Oh, I bet it's up there in our neck of the woods.
I really thought that we had it bad until the first year I went to Kentucky to deer hunt during the rut.
Yeah.
And then it was amazing. Like, as soon as I came from Tennessee into Kentucky, there wasn't a mile without a deer in the road.
Well, I mean, it's the same way. I mean, if you get into mid-October here, every half a mile there's a dead deer.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, let's see. I just looked, and we got reported in 23. This is just reported through Department of Public Safety. It was like 6,500, and so that's
way low.
Yeah, that's way low because that's reported.
Yeah, that's way low. That's somebody that actually made an insurance claim, I guess.
Yeah. But you're looking at, you've got things like, I mean, we look at, average, fawn recruitment rates, and we look at, mortality. I mean, there's a lot of things that get plugged into these models, but they basically kind of reconstruct the population based on harvest and some other factors, and that kind of gets me into something else that we get from this data. It's not just a body count, but you look at sex ratio, how many bucks versus how many does. And then another thing that we'll be able to get out of this data that we have not been able to get from survey data is a little bit more biological data that will kind of help us with age structure of the harvest, which again gives you even better information to plug into a model, because within the information we're collecting, if it's a buck, we're asking antler points, and then there's some optional things you don't have to answer, but if you choose to, you can, and that's inside antler spread to the nearest inch and weight if you actually weigh the deer. And in knowing that only a small or a certain percentage of people will put that optional information in, still with 200,000 deer harvested, and we'll get enough of a sample then to be able to kind of look and get some estimates on, all right, we know how many button bucks are harvested. We can look at antler points and antler spread and weight and kind of estimate, all right, this is our yearling, our 1.5-year-old bucks, and this is our 2.5-year-old plus based on these, characteristics, because they'll fall out at certain places with average antler spreads, and particularly antler spreads is pretty telling for age class.
My brain, I'm sorry, and I do want to get back to that, Jay, but my brain keeps red flagging and telling me something just doesn't add up. So for instance, if we kill 200,000 deer and we estimate another 20,000 are unreported, and we estimate another 20,000 are hit by a car, and we come up with a number, 250,000 deer are killed in South Carolina every year. Just throwing a number out there. I mean, why is it that we're not harvesting, killing 90% of the population? And I know, commonsensically that's not true, right? But why does the model not? Why does a model not take into consideration that you could be wiping out the entire population of a herd when you plug in a number that says 220,000, 250,000? Why is it not 98% of the population? Why is it not 70% of the population? Why is it not 40% of the population that we've killed? What if we've got really good hunters here and they know every single deer on their property and they wipe them out? And I know that sounds crazy. That's not commonsensical. I'm just saying theoretically, why does the model work if you don't know what percentage of that population are being killed?
Well, you're estimating that because you've got estimates on the deer densities, and deer per square mile, and then you're looking at harvest per unit area. We're not just looking at harvest across the board. We look at, harvest by county, and then you can say, all right, in this county, the harvest was 15 deer per square mile. And, and we know that, based on estimates that, deer populations in that county are 60 per square mile. So we're taking out 25% of the deer population.
So there is some variable that's being plugged in for population density.
Yeah. It's not just, like I said, there's a lot of things that go into it. You're not just looking at harvest, but harvest is a driver in it, because this harvest goes up and down. But, you're looking at, estimates on non-hunting mortality, estimates on fawn survival, estimates on density. There's a lot of things that get plugged in there, and then the model runs, and what harvest is can move it. But it's not solely based on harvest, but that is an important cog in the machine. You have to know what you're removing every year, in addition to some other pieces of data.
No problem with that, as long as the variable on population density is plugged into the machine. That conceptually makes sense to me. So where's that data come from? Where does a population density data for deer in South Carolina come from? How do you come up with that number?
Some of it is periodic, spotlight surveys or now camera surveys and data like that. And then some of it's just was established at a point in time, and we kind of look at things over, you can kind of estimate trends over time, if it's going up or down. Again, there's a lot of pieces to this. If typically you can kind of, again, harvest tells you a lot, because you can look at hunter effort and see, is harvest going up with no more hunter effort? We've probably got more deer on the landscape. But in general, you get these estimates that don't, they're not, population's not bouncing up and down year to year. Deer populations don't make huge jumps, up or down at a county level or a game zone level or statewide level in a year. That's kind of on a property you might see some movement, but we can kind of establish some of these estimates, and they're pretty good for a little while. All
right. So what's a statewide estimate today
of total deer?
Total deer.
Oh God. Probably 750,000 or so. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, but yeah, basically $750,000.
$750,000, and what kind of a confidence degree?
So we take out basically a third of the.
Yeah, it's 30% of the population.
30% of the population every year. Okay, at least. Plus whatever else.
Well, it's a little.
15,
No, it's more
15%.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's or
20%.
20%.
Yeah, there you go. we never claim to be math majors here.
No.
Yeah, it's roughly 20%.
20%.
And so, and we kind of know too that, at a level like that, where you're going to have a a steady population, or where you're going to see declines, or where you're going to see increases. Um, but yeah, we're in that realm, and that's based on the data. And that's kind of another point is the data we've been, when people say why do we need to do this, and this is where I go with it a lot. Historically, and I think people will remember this. Years ago we used physical check stations that people had to take a deer to, and that way of getting data has come and gone. That was back when hunter numbers were lower and harvest was lower, and people were, it was a slower pace of life, and you had these mom and pop convenience stores and hardware stores and feed stores and tackle shops and stuff, and people wanted to take a deer or a turkey to a check station. They wanted to show it off, and they wanted to see what other people killed, and they wanted to hang out and talk. Well, that those days are gone. Those places don't really exist anymore to any extent, and people just wouldn't tolerate that level of inconvenience to have to. We're talking about people who don't want to, find cell phone service or spend a minute to report something. They sure don't want to drive to the other side of the county to do it. So, and that was probably the least accurate way we got data. So we morphed from that, and for the last 40 years or so have done postseason surveys that we mailed to people. And then we're transitioning those now to online surveys. But we've done these mail surveys. We send them out to 35,000 hunters at the end of the season, and we'll get 5,000 back, and we run the statistics, and it comes through, and we get these harvest estimates. And we have been beat up over that data for years. People say we don't believe it. Nobody surveyed me. I didn't get a survey. I don't believe your numbers, even though they're statistically sound. And I think y'all understand surveys and sampling populations and how that works. I mean, it's good data, but that's how we have historically estimated harvest, is by asking hunters after the season, what did you kill? How many did you hunt? How many did you kill? Where did you kill them? That type of thing. And so now this is a better way with the technology that's available to get that data and get better data, and to have better support, because people in general, if they're participating, if they're saying, yeah, I'm reporting my harvest, they have better confidence in the information. And so that's another why we're doing this, is because, with the technology available now and the route that other states have gone, I mean, this is the methodology that state agencies are using to get harvest data now. And it's more efficient, and it's cheaper, and it gives you real-time data, and it gives you more detailed data at the times, looking at the harvest throughout the season, and we can get information down to a WMA or a county or, whatnot. So, that's another reason is we've been, we've heard from hunters for years that we don't believe your estimates. So, here's a way that, we can get better information, and hopefully people will believe the numbers that we put out every year. And there's an expectation from hunters, and there's an expectation, I think, from the General Assembly. We get asked all the time, what was this harvest? What was that? How many we're taking? I mean, that's not only do we use it to manage, but there's just an expectation from hunters and the public and lawmakers to know what's going on with these game animals and how many are being harvested every year. And, because in addition to the biological aspects of it, there's economic impact of these things. And so we need to be able to keep a finger on the pulse of what's happening. And as you mentioned earlier, deer populations are doing fine right now, but there's no guarantee that's going to be the case forever. We've seen them go up, we've seen them stabilize, we've seen them drop. These things don't stay static, and we need to be able to track changes over time and have long-term data sets to be able to predict something coming or adjust, seasons or bag limits if things, if populations go up or populations go down. We need to be able to have good information to be able to make recommendations for changes to address that. If we need to kill more deer or less deer, or things of that nature. So that's really the whys. We need to have good data to be able to monitor what's happening. And as you said, there's other ways to monitor populations, but harvest is a big component in it.
All right. So do you expect any surprises? Like we get through January and you get all your harvest data, all this stuff uploads into an Excel spreadsheet or something, and it winds up on Jay Cantrell's desk. Do you expect any surprises?
I don't know. I hope not, but it's possible. I'll kind of look at what we've learned from turkeys, and if it follows suit with turkeys, then no. What we saw, we were doing this, fortunately, this isn't our first dive into a system like this. We've had this in place for about 4 years for turkeys and several years for bears. And what we've seen with those is that the survey data that we were doing lined up really well with the harvest reporting data. So no big surprises. Now, deer might be a little different story. It's a lot more hunters and a lot higher harvest, and there's maybe room for a little more error. But it's given us good confidence in our postseason surveys that data that we had, but it was reassuring. And, so I don't expect that harvest numbers from harvest reporting will be significantly different than what we've been estimating. But hey, we could get surprised. We'll see. But no, I don't expect that. I think we'll be in the same ballpark, but it'll give us more detail, to look at trends. And you've seen some of this that we've shown you for turkeys, to where you can actually see peaks at, weekends and opening days. And so it'll be interesting to be able to graph out harvest across the season at a daily level and see where there's peaks and valleys. And I'm sure we'll see, a big peak in late October with the rut, and we'll see, there'll be some interesting things that come out of it. But it's going to be valuable to have that information at a county level and a daily level and a wildlife management area level. But I'm not expecting surprises. But we've been able to get some other interesting things out of the turkey data too. Some more kind of demographic related harvest data. To look at, because all this is associated with a hunter and a customer. We can kind of see, non-resident harvest, or harvest by a different license type or age group, or with the deer tagging, it's going to be real interesting to look at use and of the different tags. Obviously people get a base set of tags, or there's people that have quota tags, but then there's the optional doe tags that people can get, and there's the restricted buck tags people can buy, and what is the utilization of those. So we're not expecting surprises, but we're just looking forward to seeing some new information that we've not been able to look at before.
So I'm asking a question for both of y'all, because I know Steven's done it before. I've never actually got Russ, my son, who's 7 years old, deer tags. How do I go about that? Like, I've got a minor who doesn't require a license, but obviously does require tags, except on youth days, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
How do I go about that? Do I go into the app like I've got and just create a new customer and do it and create it under his name, obviously?
Yep.
And then it'll give me the option. It eventually recognizes that he's underage when I put his birth date in there, and give me the option to get the tags. Is that how it works?
That's exactly it. You got
Okay.
it. You got it figured out. It's that simple that you would just. I mean, there's obviously other ways you could go into one of our licensing offices. Like up your way. There's one in
Aner.
Aner, and there's. But yeah, that if you could go into the app or online and just set up his information as a customer, so he then has a customer ID in the system, and you're exactly right. It by the birth date knows that he's a youth, and it gives you the option to get the tags, which are free.
Okay. So
for him.
that
So
that answers the question.
It's a very simple process.
Well, I'm glad he hadn't pulled the trigger yet, because prior to that, I thought I stuck one of my tags on it, but
Yeah. All right. Jay, you have been very thorough, and I think you've answered questions. I don't know if you're going to satisfy everybody with those answers, but they were, they're genuine, and you believe what you say, and I believe that you believe what you say, and so, I understand right now there's a big, really for the last decade, but especially now, there is just distrust of government left and right everywhere you look, and some of that for real good reason, honestly.
Yeah.
But you've always been an honest broker of the truth, and I respect you for that, and I appreciate you, and I think you've got the best interest at heart for the citizens of South Carolina and for our resource. So,
hey, you got a compliment.
Appreciate.
I appreciate it.
You got a compliment.
Could I add a few more things on the tag? From some things we've heard.
Yeah.
Right.
Some
And I got one last
and
question.
Kind of explain
I'm sorry.
the justify the why. We've heard. We have tags. Why do we have to do reporting? And I think we kind of covered that we don't get harvest data from tags. Tags are just a tool for enforcement of bag limits, and that doesn't give us any data. So the reporting gives us actual harvest data. So that's, kind of the simple justification there. And I'll add to that what we are thinking, and just, to be honest and straightforward and let people know, is that hopefully if this works well and we get good compliance with harvest reporting, that we will phase out physical tags for deer and just have an electronic tagging thing, basically just kind of modification of what we've got now.
Yeah.
And I know, Senator, you hunt other states, and you've probably experienced that. That's what a lot of states have gone to. And so that's kind of the end goal, but you don't want to pull one off before you start the other. I think there needs to be an overlap there. And as we get people up to speed on this, and it's working and people are comfortable with it and compliance is good, then we can get rid of putting physical tags on deer, which will be great for us from a cost savings and administrative headache, and great for the public not having to worry about that. I mean, we're spending, and we don't mind telling people this, this is just being forthcoming, about $300,000 a year to, for the supplies and printing and postage to put deer tags out there for everybody. So,
well, I'll tell you, Jay, that's good to hear, because I've always thought that, honestly, that turkey tags were one of the biggest waste that we had, because, you kill that turkey, or at least I do. I kill that turkey, you tag it, and I literally cut the breast out of it and maybe the legs off of it, cut the tag right back off of it, and throw it in the ditch.
Yeah.
The carcass goes in the ditch. And so, what's the – I'm like, why did we spend $40,000?
It's an enforcement tool from, the point of kill till you get
I got
home.
it. I got it. I mean, but sometimes home is where you kill that turkey.
I know. And so, and even states that have gone away from putting a physical tag on, most of them still have some kind of hunter report card, hunter harvest record, a card or a sheet in a wallet that you have to, somehow, verify that, the time you killed it, you put a notch or a mark or write something down, to commemorate the harvest, so to speak. So there would probably still be something to that effect, but that could be something you print yourself. And that way, if you get checked, in the woods or on the way somewhere. But no, I think, the end goal is to get to just a reporting system and get away from the cost and headache and
Yeah.
Frankly, the biggest problem we have now with tags is the postal service and delays there, and so, or lost mail or bad addresses and things like that. So if we can navigate away from that and get to an electronic system, we'll be a lot better. We can spend that money on things that actually benefit habitat and research and management, and not on printing and postage.
Well,
So
that
that
makes
is
sense.
an end goal.
That makes sense to me. I mean, because look, more so with turkeys than deer. But if you're a renegade, you're not tagging a turkey.
Nope.
No, you're going to break the law
You're
regardless.
going to break
So,
the law. You're not going to tag that turkey. You're going to kill it,
you know,
clean it, and he goes in the ditch. And so it's really the guys that will follow the law will tag it electronically. The guys that won't follow the law aren't going to tag it at all.
right.
And that's just reality.
And as long as we can estimate compliance, and we've been able to do that with turkeys, and just so and the listeners know, with turkey harvest reporting, we've estimated from postseason surveys that about 75% of people are complying with the reporting system. And so that allows you to take the reported numbers you have and then adjust them to get your actual harvest estimates. But and if we can get that same thing with deer, then we'll be good. So that's a point I want to make, that we have to tag deer, but tagging and reporting are two different things, and eventually we hope to get away from tagging and just have reporting. The other thing is, as I mentioned, we're one of the last states to implement this. It's quick. It doesn't take a lot of effort to do. There's multiple methods to do it. And another thing is, hunters have, from a turkey standpoint, there was a little bit of grumbling at first, just like there was some grumbling when we first implemented tagging for deer, and that went away. I think some of this is just something new and different. But turkey hunters have really embraced this and like it. And one of the things they really like about it is that this data is not just something that goes into a hole and we look at it, DNR. It's publicly available. There's on the app and on the web, there's that Hunter's Toolbox feature where anybody can log on during the season and see what the harvest looks like, on a given day or a range of dates, or at a statewide level or county level or WMA level. You can go in and kind of query that system and get that data. So hunters that have kind of discovered that, they like it. They like to be able to look at harvest during the season and see what it's looking like.
You can look
So
at individual days. Will it show like broken down by on October 8th, where somebody might argue that, hey, we're in the rut now down here, and somebody in the upstate may say different, and then you can look at harvest and say, oh, look, well, this many bucks were harvested, on October 7th here, and then up north, up in Greenville County, there was only this many, or vice versa. So you can get
that's available to the public.
Oh, awesome!
So you'll be able to see that. So I think that once people kind of see that piques interest and gives some buy-in, and people think that this isn't just data that they're reporting and goes away. They're actually can see it real time.
Right.
So that, I think that's a big plus to the system. But yeah, you're exactly right, Angus. They can compare counties and days and whatnot. So, like I said, I think it's something new, it's something different, and that gets a few people excited and spun up. But I think as people get used to it, they'll realize it's a very easy to use, user-friendly system. We're just trying to get data so we can better manage the deer herd, and we have. And the thing for people to remember too, in South Carolina, we have had and continue to have very long deer seasons, very little liberal bag limits.
Yep.
And we have not asked much out of hunters in the past, and we've managed to maintain and have good numbers of deer for people to harvest, and we're just asking for a little bit of help now, and hunters to do their part and give us some good data to work with, so we can continue to have good deer hunting and maybe better deer hunting in the future. So that's kind of the gist. We just want to have the best information to work with, so we can make good decisions and make good recommendations to the legislature if we need to make any adjustments going forward to seasons or bag limits or methods or anything like that. We want to have the best data, and I think, Senator, you can appreciate that. When we go over and talk to y'all, y'all expect us to have some good facts and data to back up what we're coming there with, and this is a way we can get that.
I do. I'm guilty as anyone of asking for data before we do anything. I want to see great data, and honestly, Jay, sometimes DNR doesn't have it.
Yeah.
And I can quote you example after example of that. The flounder population is one of those things. We made sweeping changes to the flounder population, and 80% of the flounder catch, it's estimated 80% of the flounder catch comes from Horry and Georgetown County. You know how many samples DNR has taken from Horry and Georgetown County prior to this year? Zero, none.
Yeah.
Zero.
And so, there are examples where,
Right.
where things make me a little bit nervous to hear. We're changing this, we're changing that. Well, where's the data? Where's the data? And I understand what you're saying. You're saying this is an opportunity for us to get that data. And so I appreciate that.
Yep.
I understand it's going to be a little bit of a pain for some people. But I think we're doing it for the right reasons. It sounds like it to me. You've convinced me. And so I appreciate your time. Nicholas, did you have one last question?
I have one last question. It's not anything major, but I did want to know, because I grew up in Lake City, and, honestly, you either had football on the weekends, on Friday night, and then it was deer hunting all weekend. And here it's so different. Obviously, we don't have, I'm hoping I'm going to get a couple invites to hunt with the senator, and I can go to a couple other places. But, growing up there in the farmland, everybody deer hunted. It was huge. Here, so much different. What are we at? 5.5 million? What's the population?
Yeah.
5.5?
Yeah. It's good.
What is do you have a rough number on per capita? How many people actually purchase deer licenses or pursue deer during deer season out of the 5.5 million people? Do you have any idea?
We do have some estimates, and that's something that comes from license sales and tag purchases, and then where we correct that. I mentioned our postseason surveys that we do.
Right.
The short answer is we think we've got about 175,000 deer hunters. There's more people than that get tags, but then one of the and we'll continue to do these postseason surveys. We're migrating those to an online format for cost savings and to be more efficient and get data quicker. But that's the first question is, did you hunt? Because everybody who gets tags or has the license privileges that would let them hunt does not hunt. We know that. So, but yeah, we've got less than 200,000 deer hunters out of 5.5 million people.
Less than 5%, right?
That's crazy. 5%.
Less than 5% people
Yeah.
are deer hunters in South Carolina. Unbelievable,
Yeah.
which tells me that we've grown in population from people of a different persuasion.
And exactly, the interest in hunting isn't there anymore.
And that's not a good thing, honestly.
That's not a good thing. It's not
It's
because
not a good thing.
Nah, it's not. And the availability, and that's why it's so critical that we've tried to acquire lands as every chance we get to get more public land, because that with more people, there's just less and less opportunity, places to go, and private land is getting harder and harder to get access to, and a lot of places where anybody who used to let somebody hunt on a farm or their property is kind of gone, and then you had hunt clubs that are now being purchased by an individual, and so you had a place that maybe 10 people hunted that now 1 or 2 people hunt. So it's just
we've got a hunt club in Georgetown County that is 6,000 acres. 3,000 acres of it is proposed to being converted into solar panels.
Oh yeah, that's right.
How many deer and deer hunters do you think are going to be tromping over those 3,000 acres of solar panels?
Yeah. But no, it's a real issue. That's a whole nother subject for another day. But no, that's a big concern. From our standpoint, as a wildlife agency and as a biologist, I struggle with that a lot. Being the fastest growing state in the country is great for economic development, but it's terrible for my business.
I think it's terrible. I think it's terrible for our state.
It's bad on multiple fronts, and I know you're trying to go. I'm going to try to get you out of here, but it is bad on multiple. It's bad in that let's just take it from a fishing perspective, because one of the other guys that just walked in sitting here is a fishing guide.
Yep.
And listening to us, Jason Burton,
Captain Jason Burton is sitting down with us now.
the flounder pounder.
Hello, hello.
The bad thing about it is, take a place like Merle's Inlet, finite amount of water, a ridiculously large population of people that try to get on that water. Quite a few of them are throwing pyramid sinkers with braided wire to try to catch a redfish, that they bought from Walmart. But still, some of those people are successful in fishing. None of those people were here 20 years ago.
Nope.
No.
And so from that perspective, it's bad because you've got a finite resource and a lot of people chasing it. But it's also bad because the population demographic seems to be changing away from hunting. And maybe that's because these people are aging. Also, the people that are moving here are aging. But when you tell me that less than 5% of our 5.5 million people actually deer hunt, that's concerning.
I know,
It
Jay.
is.
Go ahead, Jay. I'm sorry.
And that's our biggest hunting constituent group, is deer hunters. So we need to start thinking about.
So that's probably
Yeah.
that's probably the biggest group of hunters that we have. I mean,
It is.
yeah, right. I mean, you're not going to turkey hunters. What, 50,000 turkey hunters? Maybe.
Correct.
Yeah. I mean, quail hunters, probably more like 10,000 quail hunters,
Or at the most.
or
Yeah.
less, right? And so,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
it's bad. I mean, you start adding. Obviously, there's some
there's overlap.
but then there's some. There's more than 200,000 hunters, but it's still not significant. We're probably, I don't know, 8% of the population.
I
maybe.
think another thing that I have. This is something that I've seen huge in the last 3 days. I've seen like 2 different Facebook threads or social media threads, and it was certain real estate things, be it a horse farm for one family, be it a farm for another family, where the third generation, the parents, grandparents, everybody has passed off. It was given to the 3 kids who don't hunt or anything, and in both instances, they are being sold to developers to build houses.
For sure, yeah.
And
because there's no connection to the
Yeah.
land there.
and there's no connection to the land at all.
It's a challenge, and I know the senator, and I know Senator Campson's worked hard on some of this, and obviously there's been a lot of strides with the Conservation Bank and conservation easements that have helped with some of that, and and acquiring more public land. But that's a real concern for us. I mean, we can talk harvest and numbers and all that, but it all comes down to none of that really matters if there's not any more land available, or if hunter numbers get so small that we don't have a voice anymore.
Right.
So it's a real concern, and something that maybe Senator Goldfinch's Yankee tax will come through and help us out on. But,
Jay, I don't call it the
we'll see
Yankee
what
tax now. I don't call it. Somebody called it the Yankee tax,
Hang on,
but
where's
I
my-
didn't call it the Yankee tax.
Hang on, I got something for that.
It's a statewide impact fee for newcomers.
There you go.
yeah.
Let's be
But
hey,
in all seriousness, there are a lot of concerns and issues from a wildlife conservation, wildlife habitat, and hunting standpoint. And I know y'all are concerned and paying attention to that stuff and give a voice to it on this podcast.
Well,
Maybe we'll see some things trend in the right direction.
we look forward to talking to you again, Jay.
Yeah, we do.
I'd like to get back with you and after the season's over and do a deep dive in the numbers, maybe.
Absolutely, I'd love to do that. I think it'll be interesting for all of us to kind of
And-
look at. And as I mentioned, we get some different stats that fall out of this. I think you've seen some of that from the turkey standpoint, where we can really see some, some of it's kind of gee whiz, but some of it has some real management bearing. But yeah, love to do that.
And I also would like to
we'll
pick
keep
your brain on
posted.
bear, and how you come up with the limit. Where
We've been working on this, Inglis.
I can imagine.
I've been working with the bear guys. Who's the bear guy? Remind me, Jay.
Well, I think you've been talking with Sam Chapelier.
Well, yeah, and I mean,
some, but
Sam too, but there was another one that I was talking to. Anyway, we're looking at changing the way we do bear season, and at least this district's a little different. This
yes.
different, a little different than other units, but we're looking at changing the way we do bear seasons. And Jade, you might be more versed on that than I am, but I know that's, we're looking at changing that, increasing the.
We're looking at increasing the harvest quota in y'all's part of the state there in Game Zone 4, that 5-county area. We've been looking at that. We've had a few 4 years now where bait has been allowed, and we've had the harvest quota, and we're hitting that quota every year it's a 2-week season. We're hitting the quota usually about a weekend. So we're getting about half of the season.
Sometimes a day in.
And and the population is still doing fine. We're not seeing any indication from all the metrics we look at, not only harvest, but road kills and, nuisance complaints and various things. There's no indication that population is hurting. So we're comfortable with bumping that harvest quota up. That obviously won't happen this coming bear season in October, but likely something for next year to get some more bears harvested in that. And as you know, most of them are in Georgetown, Williamsburg County.
And Jay,
kind of the epicenter.
This is where I pat myself on the back. Who's the one? Who's the one that fussed about this and asked for a change? And you guys, to your credit, looked at it and said, "Yeah, you're right. We absolutely
no, that's
need
true.
it." All right,
that's true.
One more while I got you, since I'm patting myself on the back. Are you following gators at all? That's reptiles are.
Oh yeah, why did we talk about gators? Yeah,
reptiles are a different office.
Yeah, I don't deal with them a lot. I kind of that happens next door to me in the office, so I hear some conversations and join in some, lunchtime and whatnot. But I'm not a gator guy, but I know there's some
there's changes coming to gators too.
Some changes possibly coming there too.
So
to
you
get
heard
a little bit more opportunity.
Yeah, you heard it here first on the Trilogy Outdoor podcast. You're getting more bears and you're getting more gators.
Oh boy, good.
Yeah. So everybody that's been fussing about having 4 or 5 years of points for gators, your time's a coming. Okay, your time's a coming.
We try to be responsive, and we don't just get stuck in a rut. I mean, we can look at good data and listen to good arguments and make some changes. So that's we try to be adaptable and responsive. And again, that's where good data comes in. We can't comfortably make those decisions without knowing what's happening. But we've got good survey data and good harvest data on both of those species, and so if we feel comfortable about providing more.
Well, that's why
harvest opportunity, we can do it.
That's why South Carolina is so much better than North Carolina, because your job is to worry about the resources, and then the senator and the House and their committee is to worry about the constituents.
Yeah.
And then it's for the two of y'all to get together and come up with something that works for everybody and keeps the resources and works for both.
Now you nailed it, English. That's it in a nutshell, and how it should work and usually does work. But yeah, it's.
And I'll tell you.
I mean, obviously we hear from the constituents too, but yeah, it's
right.
The responsibility of the legislature to answer to those folks, and us to have the best interest of the resource in mind and find out where that overlaps.
And I'll tell you, there have been times where I have been a real pain in the ass to DNR over the years in my advocacy for constituents.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
And I believe that's my job to do that. Now, I don't do that. I like to think that I don't do that to the detriment of a population of a species. I'd like to think that I look at the data, I hear DNR, and I make a responsible decision. But that back and forth doesn't happen. I don't know if it happens in any other state. It might be maybe one other state. But this is a very unique model that we have here in South Carolina, and it does work well.
I think it works.
Yeah, it works well. If you, and we don't have it, Jay, and you're certainly not an example of this, but if you have a DNR that's full of let's just say, left-leaning, anti-hunting, anti-fishing.
Which could happen.
Outdoor, people, Birkenstock wearing type folks.
Tree hugging. Go ahead.
Tree hugging, bunny hugging type folks. And they're calling all the shots. Y'all, you're in trouble. Like, you are in trouble. And we don't have that here, thankfully. And if we did have some of that, the legislature would be there to sort of push back. So it's a good system. And Jay, we appreciate you coming on as usual. You've been very helpful, and we're going to get you back and talk about some of the details of the numbers when we get it in.
That sounds great. Look forward to it. Appreciate y'all having me on.
All right, Jay. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. All right, buddy. All right. Hey, I was going to say, bringing up something since we got Jason in here right now, the Flounder Pounder. Quick rundown on, you and I talked a couple weeks ago on Trilogy Outdoors radio show, not on the podcast. You feel like the flounder fishing this year has been some of the best, if not the best, that you can remember.
Absolutely. I will tell you, from somebody who spends 95% of the time I have on the water, I've never seen it this good.
So, you know what's interesting about that?
I want to hear,
is that I remember having a conversation very similar to this last year with somebody, and it feels like it's gotten better. Maybe the year before that, and then last year, and even better this year. I feel like we're moving in the right direction.
The first year we had this conversation, it was with him and Jay Bache.
Yeah.
We had the conversation about how it was getting better. That's 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Last year, we had the same conversation about how much better flounder fishing is.
Yeah.
And here we are once again.
Well, what I see is we're trending in the right way.
Yeah.
And I mean, 4 or 5 years ago, I don't know, maybe, time flies. Maybe it was 6, 7 years ago. I just remember we had a couple bad years.
Yeah, we did.
And it was like, all right, have we finally, gotten too many people, too much pressure, technology, whatever. And then all of a sudden, things started looking up. Now, what I've seen on my thing, and I don't know if it has anything to do with the closure in North Carolina. I don't know if it just has to do with the reduced number of fish you can keep or bumping it up to 16. But what
Probably a combination of all of it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a method to the madness.
Yeah.
But what I've seen is 3 years ago was probably one of the best years I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But the problem was they all were small.
Right.
Small fish in my world are males.
Yeah.
So we just didn't see a lot of females, and the females that we did see typically were on the reef.
Right.
And then last year it was kind of like, okay, well, last year the numbers were amazing. I mean, you could go out there 7 days a week and catch double digits if you spent the time, and that was not a great day anymore.
Yeah.
What I've seen this year is now you've mixed everything. Some of the guys that fish with us are some of the best flounder fishermen I've ever seen in my life. And I mean, the consistency of 3 to 6 pound flounder I'm seeing brought back to the dock.
Amen.
We're working with David Fadd
And they're coming from the inlet.
They're coming from the inlet.
These are not coming from the reef.
Yeah,
these are not reef flounder.
Yeah, these are not deep water flounder. So, I mean, that's what I wanted to get at. Like, I think you're right. 2 years ago, even last year, the majority of the fish I saw gigging, and gigging, you get to see a lot of fish.
Yes.
You get to pass up a lot of fish. And gigging last year, 95% of the fish were 15 and a half inches. This year, most of the fish are 16 and a half inches. Most of the fish. And we're passing up on 16-inch fish. Like, I guarantee you that fish is legal, but we're not sticking him because we're going to see a 17, 18, 19-incher right around the corner. So you start culling, culling's the wrong word because you don't kill the fish.
Right.
We start mentally culling, because we know the bigger fish are out there laying on the flat.
Yeah.
And that's a cool thing.
It's a great thing. I mean, especially for somebody like myself. I mean, this is my 19th year of being a fishing guide, and it's amazing to see. Usually you see things decline. Once they decline, the old saying is, "Oh, it should have been here yesterday," or "It used to be great." It's cool to see it go the other way. I love to sit down, with some of the old timers, and they're like, "Oh, you should have called." I said, "No, you want to see some of the best flounder fishing you've ever seen? It's now. It wasn't 10 years ago." And I don't know, like I said, the size is what is blowing my mind.
You know what else is interesting to me? When I was a kid, there was a flounder season.
Yes.
you didn't catch flounder year round, and you probably still don't catch flounder year round, but it's almost year round.
Almost.
It is almost year round now.
Yep.
Like, I mean, there may be some doldrums in, you pick it, February, but I mean, it's almost year round now.
We just had this discussion on the dock the other day going back to trout. You know, a lot of people didn't trout fish 10 years ago.
We only trout fished in October and November.
Yeah, winter.
That's it.
time.
And you know what? The one thing that changed that was people importing bait from other states.
Yeah.
So now you've got Georgia shrimp being shipped to our bait and tackle shops.
Right.
That 10 years ago, they would have closed.
Right.
Yep.
'Cause all the shrimp are dead.
And so, you know, for a that's not the right word, non-skilled, but for a person that does not like to use artificial, when the bait shops closed and the bait went away, they winterized their boats. They're missing. But like you said, our flounder fishing is year-round.
Yeah.
Because those flounder lay dormant in the dead of winter. January and February, you get 2 or 3 hot days,
Oh, yeah.
and it warms up that mud.
Sha-
They'll bite like crazy, and then as soon as it gets cold, they go right back
On
you know,
a shallow
doing their
mud
thing.
bank. Yeah, you're right.
And I've heard some good gigging in the winter.
Yeah, I mean, I usually stopped in the past. I usually stopped when we got to late November, Thanksgiving time period. It was pretty much over, But that's not the case anymore. That's not the case. I think you got more fish and you got bigger fish.
Yeah.
And that's a cool combination to have here.
Yep. Tony went to gig Friday night. Last week. He went to go to Merle's Inlet. He had some technical difficulties with his MacGyver rigged lights. However, there were 16 vehicles in the parking lot.
In Merle's Inlet. Oh, I don't gig Merle's Inlet anymore. It's just too crazy.
Yep.
Well, you know, that was the cop-out years ago. Remember when fishing wasn't great? It was, oh, the giggers.
Everybody would say it was the giggers.
Oh, it's the
Yeah,
giggers.
yeah,
It's the giggers.
it's the giggers.
It's not the 300 people a day fishing for them. I mean, it's the 12 giggers who are getting them.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, we've talked about it, though. The resilience of Merle's Inlet and what is shown over the last couple of years is just incredible. Sean Bond from Crazy Sister and I were talking about it. It's just amazing that you can, you can see still just incredible catches.
Yeah.
Numbers, size, and everything, and yet every 10 seconds there's another boat riding across the top of that fish.
We had a 7-pounder weighed in yesterday at our dock. I mean,
Did you really?
Yeah.
That's great. And then, we're in late August here.
Yeah, we're not in
Right.
favorable, super favorable. Big,
Right. I mean, it's not April or May. I mean, we're in late August here.
This is some of my favorite flounder fishing. You do, don't
too,
lie,
me
you
too.
love it this time of the year. It is.
I like it in October. I'm in October.
I'm not till October. I meant we're coming to it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'm in October. Like, if you said go flounder fishing 1 month out the year, pick it, I'd say it's October for me.
There's opportunity out there right now. You know, the fish are not much different than we are. As that water gets hot, as we get hot, I'm not going to go out there and work in the yard.
Yeah.
I'm not going to, wife's going to be like, oh, we need to get stuff done. Guess what? We're going to do it on a cool day.
Yeah.
So what happens with those fish? They get super hot. They sit in deep holes, which kind of puts them in the same area, and then they don't eat as much because they don't want to give up all their energy. So what happens is they're just eating big baits.
Yeah.
So you can feed a big bait and almost selectively eliminate the little fish this time of year, especially with our bigger mullet that are coming in and other stuff. So there's opportunity to catch less numbers if you just want to go out there and target the monsters.
Yeah.
It starts right now,
Yeah, that's what I want. I don't want to catch 10, 16-inch fish. I want to catch 3 19-inch fish, or preferably 20-inch fish.
Yeah.
20-inch fish. I tell you, the last time I dove, and it's been a little while because of the storm and then it blew for feels like a month. By the way, it looks like we got a good week coming up next week.
Next week,
Next
yeah,
week
after
looks
this weekend.
Beautiful.
Got a big window coming. Looks like 4-day window, which is good for this time of year. Last time I dove, which had to have been a while ago, 8 weeks ago, I dove out, let's just say at the ledge.
Yep.
110 foot of water. I was diving for megalodon teeth. I wasn't spear fishing, but I had a spear gun in my hand because I always do, in case I see a giant hogfish. Or,
I was going to say, you're not going to pass dinner on the way down.
If he's when I'm megalodon tooth hunting, if I see a fish that won't get out the way, I shoot him.
Your dinner.
Right, your dinner, right. But I'm not chasing gags out, ghosting gags and all that stuff and getting high and diving down on top of them. I'm not chasing fish. I'm just picking up shark's teeth in the sand, and if a hogfish swims in front of me, I shoot it. I'll tell you this much. So I got up on top of this plate, like this limestone plate, where we megalodon tooth hunt. It's interesting. There's like this big plate, and it doesn't come more than a foot off the ground, so you really don't pick it up on a bottom machine. But it's like as big as this parking lot. I mean, it's a big limestone plate.
And it sits about a foot over.
It's about that high.
Yeah.
And it sort of slopes down, from, let's just say, from 103 foot of water down to 110 foot. It's just a gradual slope, big limestone plate, and it slopes down, and then you got a 1 foot ledge. And sometimes that ledge washes under, and you'll get gags or scamps that'll stick up underneath. I popped up on top of the plate, and I saw flounder everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Everywhere I looked, there was a 20-plus inch flounder just lay, and I didn't notice them until I popped up on the plate, and I put my knees down on the plate because I was putting a tooth in my bag, and my knees went down on a big flounder, and then your eyes adjust once you see the first one. Your eyes adjust, and I was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like 10, 12 flounder, 20-inch flounder right here on this plate in 110 foot of water. Big flounder. And,
wow.
That's incredible.
I mean, right now is the time for flounder. It is the time, the year of the flounder. And I'm so happy that it's gotten as good as it has.
When's it going to be the year of the red snapper?
I've heard about this red snapper.
Oh, they're endangered.
Never seen one, huh?
They're endangered.
They are so endangered.
They're endangered
Dude.
of being caught every 5 minutes.
Did you see the New Inlet Princess on their new introduction to fishing head boat trip where they stay within 11 miles or closer? Did you see all the red snapper that they were releasing?
Hey, we're going to be, if things don't change, we're going to be catching them at the jetties soon. I mean, it's just a matter of time.
So I had lunch with, I don't think he'd mind me saying this on the podcast. I had lunch with Congressman Fry yesterday.
Oh, awesome.
And this was all we talked about was, number one, the speed limit, and number two, red snapper. That's all we talked about the entire lunch. And he said, well, Stephen, what's the solution? Like, what can I do in Congress to make this better? And I said, the number one thing I can think of for red snapper is give us more mileage on our jurisdiction. Like, take us out to 30 miles, take us out to 40-mile state jurisdiction, and let us sort of manage our own destiny. Let us control our own future with our own fisheries. Let DNR control the management of red snapper, of gag, of scamp, of everything within the 30 or 40 miles, and that solves everything.
Yep.
That solves everything.
I agree 100%.
Yeah, I heard they got a new 36 or 39-foot contender coming for Charleston or Georgetown DNR. There's a boat right there you can get out there and police it with.
I mean, it is the most eloquent, simple solution. Give us more in terms of our jurisdiction. We got 3 miles right now, and I have no doubt that we have red snapper within 3-mile limit. But everything beyond that is full of red snapper, and they're eating every ledge, every reef, every wreck out of house and home.
Yeah, because you could even spin it, not that they're, it seems like nobody cares, but where did the black bass go?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they've
been
decimated the black bass. I mean, if you really, truly care about all the fish, they need to almost start harvesting red snapper, because if you don't, you're going to wipe out the black
wipe
sea
out
bass.
everything else.
Well, I don't think there's any doubt that gags are down either. And gags are down because red snapper are up. It's just obvious. When you have an overpopulation of almost an apex predator, I'm just going to call it an apex predator. When you have an overpopulation of an apex predator, guess what? He eats all the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He eats all the food. There is no dinner left for anybody else. And what happens? They go away. They die. They don't survive. They go somewhere else. But they're not here, and that's because an overpopulation of red snapper. It's a fairly obvious, commonsensical thing. It doesn't take a genius PhD in fisheries to understand that.
But I love what you said. I did an interview with our girl, and that was exactly what I said. I said, I for the life of me, I understand pelagic fish.
Yeah.
I understand that there's fish from other states that pass by here.
Sure.
That's obvious. But my thing is, why can South Carolina not regulate the waters off their coast? I mean, why should somebody in the Florida Keys be making decisions based on South Carolina? They probably have never been here.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's exactly right. There's a better way to do it, and I think jurisdiction's the way to do it. And we'll see. I'm going to keep pushing it. He's very agreeable to such a thing, and
We got to get through November.
we got to get through November. There's no doubt about
Correct.
that.
We got to get through November.
Yes,
Well,
we do.
I believe the speed limit will become no problem whatsoever if we get through November with, I'm just going to say, with a Trump presidency.
Yep.
If we end up with a Kamala presidency, y'all, we're going to have problems.
We're problems. The outdoorsmen.
And I'm not talking about economics. I don't need to go into that, although I'm way far away from Kamala economically. Just on fisheries, we got problems because California bureaucrats, the folks that are following her from California, staffers of age that are going to follow her and are going to run these cabinets and that are going to be subdirectors underneath those directors, are the ones calling the shots in a place like NOAA.
Yep.
Okay? Those California bureaucrats are going to be calling the shots at a place like NOAA, which is making decisions for us in South Carolina about our fisheries. Now, think about that.
Think about it.
Think about that and be very careful about what you care about when you go to vote.
I know. Yeah. I mean, you got to think about your anger towards one person or your love for your freedom in your life. I mean, that's the way I look at it. I mean, it's and I'm just saying, we know that that's what we're up against. I mean,
We got a big problem coming in fisheries alone if Harris wins in November.
I think so too.
We just
And-
hope she don't.
Yeah, just hope you don't.
Well, I can tell you what, we're gonna do our best between now and then to try and persuade and coach everybody we can into getting out and definitely making sure they vote. But I want to thank Jay Cantrell for joining us, and the Flounder Pounder here for sitting in with us real quick. And Senator, it's a pleasure to have you in here.
Yeah, man.
We'll be back, but also you can always catch us on Saturday mornings, Trilogy Outdoors Radio Show. Now talking fins, fur, and feathers on Saturday mornings on Gator 107.9. Or visit TrilogyOutdoorsMedia.com. Fins, fur, and feathers, you're going to find it all right here on Trilogy Outdoors Podcast. Freeman Boat Works and Trilogy Outdoors are proud to announce the addition of Freeman Boat Works to our family of incredible partners. Billy Freeman and his team at Freeman Boat Works epitomize the American dream. From building the first boat in Billy's backyard to a 150,000 square foot state-of-the-art manufacturing plant over the past 15 years, they are building one of the most sought-after boats in the U.S. and beyond. These incredible fishing platforms are built in South Carolina and are second to none in stability, speed, and performance overall. These catamaran designs are engineered not only to get you to the fish fast, but comfortably too. Years of refining designs and pioneering the modern performance fishing catamaran is why Freeman Boat Works is the #1 choice for some of the biggest names in the fishing industry. If it's long runs in the Gulf or the Carolinas, or days you can go fishing in South Florida when most center consoles stay at the dock, Freeman Boat Works is at the forefront in all categories. For more information on Freeman Boat Works and their 6 available models, visit www.freemanboatworks.com. Redefine your expectations. Hey y'all, Captain E here with Southern Anglers Radio Show, and I'll tell you what, I am super excited to be down in the Pond Road Storage in Murrells Inlet. I'm located within moments of either going to the river or going to put in the inlet. I'm keeping that Key West 250 Bay Reef indoors, and it is staying in great shape. I only have to wash the boat once now, and that's when I put it up and not before I take it to go fishing. But you can get incredible options here. 20-foot wide, 50-foot deep with 14-foot roll-up doors, a most state-of-the-art security system to keep you that peace of mind on all your products that you may keep in these storage buildings. You've got climate-controlled or non-climate controlled outdoor storage for trailers, RVs, and such. You can't go wrong. 843-855-7375. Give Chris Collins a good call down there. We can't wait. We love broadcasting down here inside the storage building, and you need to come down here and check it out too. Come down. Palm Road Storage, right here in Murrells Inlet.
Trilogy Outdoors Podcast is a product of Trilogy Outdoors Media. All views and opinions of our hosts and guests are not necessarily those of our sponsors. Trilogy Outdoors is produced and edited by Trilogy Outdoors Media. Be sure to follow us on all the podcast platforms as well as our social media pages on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And also don't forget our other brands, Southern English Radio Show and Walk 'Em All Outdoor Magazine. To find more information, visit TrilogyOutdoorsMedia.com. And remember, if it's anything dealing with fins, fur, and feathers, you're going to find it right here on Trilogy Outdoors.